Silent Waves contains material that may be distressing for some listeners. If any of the content is triggering for you, please refer to the support organisations in our show notes. Act 3.
Growing up, Dad taught us all that he was a retired AFL player. It gave him authority and was one of the reasons that my brothers tried so hard to impress him. At a dinner party years later, during a conversation with a footballer from the same era, Mum found out it was a lie. I don't know who was more embarrassed, Mum or Dad.
I always questioned it. Like, it was like, and again, like you reveal it, but you almost feel awkward, like going, you never play for North Melbourne, you fucking liar. Like, imagine confronting someone and saying that they've been holding on to this lie for like 10 years of your life,
I tell you this story because when I was 16, my dad told me that his psychiatrist had diagnosed him as a pathological liar. It made sense to me, my dad projecting a false image of himself, a better version. Maybe he knew he would never be who he wanted to be. I idolized my dad, and to see him so fragile worried me. After his diagnosis, my dad's behaviour became increasingly erratic.
Came up to me like, Matt, when the time is right, go into the shed. There's a blue water container in there. And when you go there, you'll know exactly what to do. So I opened it up. There was probably 10 grand of cash in there, just sitting there. It was the most amount of money I'd ever seen in my life. Fuck me, what is all this money? So I closed the lid, slid a little 50 in my pocket, and I was like, oh shit, what's happening here?
250 in my pocket.
Yeah, it's my tax. I was like, what? What's happening?
My name is Raquel O'Brien, and this is Silent Waves.
I've been very lucky since I've come to Western Australia to have friends like you. I've enjoyed my life. It's been a good life. Actually, yeah. Forget me. But I've made a pledge that the next 50 is going to be a bit better.
When things start going wrong, he start actually showing more that he had more money. Like when he bought the Jaguar. I have a present for you. I bought something for you. I have a surprise. And I said, what surprise? And in the garage, there was that white Jaguar. And I said, why? Why did you do that? We don't need these.
These weren't isolated incidents either. Something was bubbling under the surface, something to do with money. My mum owned a wellness centre in a prime CBD location in Perth. She named it Walking on Clouds. Up 2 flights of stairs, it was as if you'd stepped into another world, a sprawling oasis. It had everything self-care, massage, facials, waxing and yoga. It even had a childcare room. Mum ran the whole show. As business got more successful, my dad stepped in and took control of the finances. It was February 2009 when truth cracked itself through the walls of their business. When Dad got to Walking on Clouds, there was an eviction notice on the door.
That was awful. That was really, really awful because it was 2 days before Valentine's Day and Walking on Clouds was doing really, really well. We were taking nearly 50,000 a month. That's how good it was. So 2 days before Valentine's Day, I was getting ready to go and he rang me. And he said, oh, you can't come here now. Oh, because we are locked out. And I said, what do you mean? And then I said, well, I want to know. We can't. We are completely booked out for Valentine's Day. And then he said, oh, well, just calm down, he's saying to me. I said, I can't calm down. And then he said, oh, I need to tell you something. We locked out because we are in arrears. with the rent. It's about 12,000. And I said, my God, what did you do with the money?
Mum found herself caught in the crossfire. The amount of debt increased by the hour as Dad chopped and changed his stories. Turns out, Walking on Clouds was $40,000 in debt. Dad hadn't paid rent for over 6 months. After the initial shock, Mum was adamant that together they could get through this.
I said to him, it's okay. We will sell everything. We'll pay all the debts. We'll sell Walking on Clouds. We'll do everything. Then we'll start all over again. I said that to him. I said.
But she didn't realise that the extent of the financial ruin was much bigger than Walking on Clouds.
We couldn't operate anymore. Then he didn't have any more money to get from Walking on Clouds, so he would borrow.
My father had been using their profits to put down payments on investments and properties all over Perth.
No imitations. What about you? You're never in the photo.
No, never am.
That's right, yeah, that's it. You're never there.
No, I'm always the man behind the camera.
The business closed down and Mum watched as her dream burned to the ground. I remember Mum sitting at home with the display of gift cards she had made in preparation for Valentine's Day, crying in disbelief. She had lost her employees, her clients, and her reputation.
Those weeks were lie after lie, really. I made him swear on your kid's head, and he did, and it was a lie. And me was the one who, because of his actions, I was the one who had my name murdered.
Yeah, because of Dad.
Mama. Yeah. And we had everything to be successful in that business because I put so much thought, effort in that, and we had everything. And here, I don't even know where the money is. Where did the money go?
On the other side of the country, playing AFL for Collingwood, my older brother Heredia was almost fooled by our illusion of stability.
Because my relationship with him had stabilised and it was built on simply the foundation of football, I didn't have to see all the other parts of him. My perception of him and the relationship he had with Mum, and because of they had the whole business thing going, there was an illusion there because I thought that was really, that things were great, you know. And so when I became aware of the situation that he had got the family into, it was a shock to me.
As soon as Dad was exposed by the Walking on Clouds fiasco, he spiraled out of control. He had an intense, manic energy. It scared me. Some days he'd go missing for hours. We were all affected by his behaviour. Uncle Brian witnessed the toll it took on my mum. Did you see a change in her over the years in terms of her fire or her livelihood?
Oh, of course I did. She was a markedly changed person.
Did that upset you?
Oh, of course it did.
Did you ever feel a desire to maybe encourage her to leave?
Not really. I don't think she would have ever dreamed of it. I mean, I think there were times when it was clear to me that things weren't good. And I knew Ralph could be angry and unpleasant. I could see that trait in him. He used to leak out here and there. So she was probably a bit fearful of Ralph because I think, he probably could have been dangerous in a fury. Mm-hmm. I think he probably could have been. Yeah, to me, in my mind, your mother was too concerned and dedicated, albeit I could see at times that things got more fragile later on. And my God, what she had to endure, for goodness sake.
I know.
Because I think that I never, ever believed, there's some people would say, oh, well, Beth must have known. How could you not know? Of course you could not know. I mean, Ralph was secretive and deceitful.
And my mum, one of the biggest beauties about her as a person is her trusting
Oh, and her loyalty.
nature, her loyalty and her belief in the good
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
of people.
Yeah.
And I think she kept looking for that.
Always looking for the good.
My mother was loyal to the core. For her, family is everything. To give context, my mother grew up during a military dictatorship in Brazil. It was an oppressive system where silence was a tool for survival. My mum didn't ask questions of my dad not because she didn't want to, but because she wasn't taught to. And because of this, it was my dad who wielded all the power. Since my dad was stripped of his license to practice law, he became a business consultant. He conducted his work privately. Just weeks after the Walking on Clouds disaster, it was revealed that he had convinced his personal clients to invest in properties that didn't exist. One of them caught on and alerted authorities. The financial mess mirrored that of 1994. Fraud. He was a repeat offender. As the eldest child, Gabriel was exposed to the intricacies of the chaos.
We couldn't just get a straight answer out of him, and then 1 minute you think, oh, everything's going to be okay. Next thing you know, it's not going to be okay. And then, we went and sat down with, I remember him, me, Mum, and the lawyer at the time. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, and the lawyer's like, look, Ralph, like, very well, like, you're in the profession, that you're looking at 7 years here in jail. Like, there's no ifs or buts about it. That's what you're looking at. It's a repeat offence, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah.
How was he reacting?
I think he just knew. He always knew what was coming because he'd done it. It wasn't stupid.
Matt, the youngest child, at 14, was preoccupied by the tedium of teenage life.
In order to save like 5 minutes getting to school, I used to just jump the back fence so I didn't have to do this big loop. And I just used to leave and not say goodbye to him. It was just the standard procedure because I was like 14. I'd wake up way too late and I'd just be like, get ready to go. So I jumped the fence and I started walking, and one day he looked over, it's like, Matt, like smiling, like I'd never seen him, like, it was kind of like, it was almost like he was watching me from afar, and then he saw me and was like, have a beautiful day, being really friendly, and I was like, yeah, all right, catch you later. I was like, that's a bit weird. I've been doing that for yonks. Why is he like following me now? Then another day, it would have been within a week, I was in bed and he came up, kissed me on the lips, was like, bye, Matt. I was like half asleep. I was like, what the fuck? He kissed me on the lips. That was weird. And then I realised that was like but he knew that this time was coming up. So he wanted to show some affection and see me and connect with me a little bit.
The last conversation I had, he rang me and said, oh, I love you guys, love you all. Just make sure you all stick together.
On the same day that Gabriel had this conversation with my dad, Mum called me when I was at school. Dad was gone.
And then the day that he went missing, I think we reported it to the police.
March 3rd, 2009.
And they put it out on radio and, went out everything, and everyone's calling me going, hey, I just heard this on the radio. Is that you? I'm like, yep. What's going on? I was like, some shit going on here, And then,
do you remember where you went to look for him? Where you thought he might be?
Just driving around the place, really not really looking in a particular area, just sort of driving around, really.
I asked Matt.
Do you remember what your thought was at the time?
I thought he was a fugitive, no?
Yeah, you thought he was a fugitive.
I think that could have been because he was a fugitive before.
Yeah.
He tried to get out of it in a similar way, but there were so many different... I was asking myself, does he have another family that he's gone and, hidden with? What he did was create so much unease in those around him because he created so much stress around the fact that he went missing. If he was just like, I fucked up, I'm going, say goodbye or some shit, he's fucking disappeared. He up and left. He did the magic smoke trick and was like, bang, kapoof, see you later. Before you start pointing the finger at me, I'm out.
When Mum said, let's go to this park where we used to walk dog, she had some urge to go there that she was feeling, and then we found the car. Remember, the first thing I did was fill the bonnet to see if it was still hot. I don't think it was. And then I was like, okay, we need to get a key. We got the key, opened the car, and then we found the letter.
Inside, he'd left 2 suicide letters. One for Mum, the other for us kids. They were messy, scribbled on paper from his office printer, almost as if they were an afterthought.
So then I remember, okay, the car's here, where's he? And so that's when I looked across, and obviously there's a big, the big reserve, the big bushland. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go walking through there and have a look. Didn't know what to look for, what to find. I just thought I'd go in there, and it's still in my mind. There was this kind of feeling that, okay, maybe he's just done a runner, like he
and
did
he's
last
leaving
time.
false leads.
Yeah, this is just divert attention, and in my mind I was like, oh, hopefully he has, and he's just like fucking somewhere else and
getting one up on the law.
Yeah, fuck the man,
The police sent a search party of 100 people to Piney Lakes Nature Reserve, a 10-minute drive from our house. It's 50 hectares of dense wild bushland, and Mum had a gut feeling that Dad may be in one specific area, so that's where the search started. Volunteers had to veer far off any tracks, deep into the bush. From the spot my father chose, it's clear he did not want to be found.
Yeah, I was at home. You guys were at the beach.
Yeah.
And then the police arrived, said, look. And then I was, what? And then I just went mad there. But then I said, no, I have to be stronger for the kids.
But what was your initial reaction?
I hit the wall and start crying and start screaming. And then I had to pick myself together to tell everyone.
Called me. I was at work. Mum called me crying. Oh, my God, they found his body. I was like, okay. I jumped in the car. I drove from work and I was driving home. And I was just like my brain wasn't even I was in autopilot. I called Uncle Brian. He knew what was going on. I kept him up to date through that whole process. He was right amongst it. And he was just like, you just, obviously really concerned for the family and everyone. He just said, make sure, you call me if anything happens. And so he was one of the first guys I called as I was driving because, older male figure, role model, someone I could talk to.
Yeah.
And I still have that relationship with him to this day.
During this time, my cousin Leonardo was still around home a lot. But when things started going badly with Dad, his presence enraged me. I couldn't stand being around him. So that day when he came to pick Matt and I up from the beach, he was the last person I wanted to see. It was tense in the car. Not a word was spoken. As we turned into our street, I saw the police cars parked in the driveway.
And then, so Dad dies. Your reaction was something of...
Cool.
Got walked
I said
through.
cool.
You stay cool.
No, I didn't stay cool. I said cool.
You said cool.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Because you broke down. You, fell over. Hysterical. I remember you sitting on the back seat of that lounge we had.
Yeah.
Collapsed back onto the lounge.
Did I?
I was like, yeah, cool. He was shook my head. I was like, okay.
I ran to my room, looked at myself in the mirror and screamed. I'd lost the most important person in my life. My mind was flooded with a stream of projections of my future in which he would no longer be. In that moment, I lost faith in the goodness of the world. For the next 3 weeks, we were inundated with grieving guests. Our fridge overflowed. The final words of my father's suicide letter demanded that we stick together, as a family. In his death, we committed to uphold our image of a united front. Together we could get through this and honour his memory. We saw it as a selfless act, his only option. For Heredia, the news of my father's death left him even more confused. He was only 24 at the time and was made to grieve in the eye of the media. For this man, who never truly felt like his father, but had influenced his career so greatly.
With his suicide, I was still looking at him from the perspective, I knew that I wouldn't have been playing AFL if it wasn't for him. And so when he died, the way that I saw his life was the impact that he had on me to be in the position that I was. At that stage, I was still very aware of the difficulty that I had between really coming out of myself with the new parts of myself, of my identity that I was adding, and expressing that within the family dynamic. So, yeah, when he died, I was still almost concealing that from the family dynamic. Where do you start? Like, how do I start talking about things that were always taboo to talk about? I was more than prepared to speak about the profound impact that he had on my life in a football sense. I hadn't yet unpacked the profound impact he had in terms of suppressing the parts of me that I was just starting to rediscover.
The news coverage of Heridier's reaction to my dad's death portrayed Ralph as an altruistic man who'd adopted him as his own, his white saviour. In our devotion to our late father, the reality of the burden he left my mother with was easily forgotten. Not only had she lost her husband, the father of her children, but in his wake she was left in financial ruin.
How much debt did Dad leave you with?
Nearly $500,000 in debt, but plus his debts, which I was not liable, which was over $1 million. He left this array of problems for me to deal with by myself, not only the financial problems, but also the emotional problems of you kids, which was very, very hard for me to deal with. No parent, no mother wants to see their children suffering. Behind the scenes, I was crumbling, but I still had to show that I was strong for you guys. I had to do that. I think it was one of the biggest challenges of my life. I was not only stripped of my husband. At the time, that's what I was thinking. But I was always stripped of all the things that we had built together, which was the house, the assets, the business, that everything. So I went to bed one day and I was married for nearly 20 years. And the next day, I didn't have anything else. I was losing everything day by day. When he died, I felt completely lost. So I felt completely abandoned, not loved. Why? You didn't love me, or the family was not important to you. Think that we fought so hard to keep together when he went to jail and everything, all of that, and was that all in vain? So yeah, it was awful. It was very sad.
At 16, with my father's death, grief consumed my life. I couldn't eat, I couldn't go to school, and I couldn't see a way out of the darkness that had enveloped me. On top of that, my cousin Leonardo was always around, offering support. It enraged me. My mind was filled with memories of how he'd abused me. I couldn't keep our secret any longer. Next time on Silent Waves.
Gabriel calls me, is like, some stuff just happened. You find out when you get to Melbourne. That's it, essentially. I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Certain things that you used to say, like, you are nothing. If it was not for Dad, you wouldn't be here. Your nephew did that to me.
One of the reasons why many victims don't speak up is because speaking up in itself is traumatic. It's bad enough to not be believed, but it's worse to be attacked.